Yargostunni. Okay. Morning, guys. Welcome to the current affairs session, where we'll be discussing all of the important topics that are necessary for UPSC, be it prelims or mains. Right. Today we'll be discussing 10th July's paper. Right. So let us start without any further delay. Firstly, we have this editorial that's talking about how SR in Manipur is a pathway to exclusion. Right. Now, what is SIR? SIR is nothing but special intensive revision. Special intensive revision that was conducted by the Election Commission of India. Right? Special intensive revision that is conducted by the Election Commission of India, which is not a proof of citizenship. Okay, this is not proving a particular person is whether that particular person is a citizen or not. Okay, you have to keep this in mind because many people get confused saying that this SR revision is to prove whether that particular person is part of India or not. It is just to update the voter list. Okay, in this basically what happens is whenever SIR is conducted, it is mainly done to update the voters list where you are removing all the ineligible voters. How can a person be ineligible? Maybe that person has renounced the citizenship of India and taken the citizenship of any other country, maybe USA or UK. So as India only follows single citizenship, that person might be excluded. And many a times when you do not update or when you do not uh, whenever that happens, right? Whenever that happens, usually they forget to update. When all of these updating is forgotten, there is a huge list of people who are not actually eligible. What happens is that there is high chance of misuse. People might misuse that particular person's identity and put false votes. Disturbance. Okay, so whenever that happens, it is the duty of the election commission of India to ensure that we are updating our voter list frequently so that the democracy or the right of voting is fair. Okay, that is the first thing. And the second thing is whenever there is a deceased person, right? And if any person expires, then the chances of removing their name is very low. Like so many people have not been removed from the voter list just because they're deceased, and that is also something that can be misused. Okay, that is another thing which actually can be misused, and people can use those votes for fake votes. So that in order to do those things and remove all the people and give all the Indian citizens a fair chance to vote, right? A fair chance to vote. Election Commission of India conducts this special intensive revision. Now, what you need to understand is that the special intensive revision has been conducted since many times. Right? It's not the first time that the special intensive revision has been conducted, and it is not only in one state. It has been conducted in all the states across India. Only when it is being conducted in all the states across India, that is when it will be fair, right? So now, why is the author talking about Manipur specifically? Is what the editorial is talking about. Okay, the editorial is talking about how Manipur is affected too much. Right, we know that there is high amount of controversies and high amount of what you call high amount of conflict conflict in the area of Manipur. You know that there is Mighties, Cookies, Nagas. All of these have a high amount of conflict. When there's a high amount of conflict in these areas, and nearly 260 people have died ever since the conflict has started. Nearly 60,000 people have been displaced. Yeah, nearly 60,000 people have been displaced. 260 people have been what you call killed, and many thousands of villages have been destroyed. So what you need to understand is that the basic governance aspect that is there in these particular states, right? It is not proper. It is not working properly. When the governance aspect is failing, it is very hard for constitutional bodies like the Election Commission of India to conduct special intensive revision. That is the first thing that the author is talking about. The second thing the author is talking about is how this particular displacement, right? Displacement that has been caused. Right? What happens when people are displaced? Obviously, all the documents that are there, that they have, be the Aadhaar card or be the education certificate, everything that is there, that they'll be lost. And you know that all the digitization that has been going on is recent. And tribal areas like Manipur, tribal areas in which Manipur is there, right? All the tribal areas, I don't think there is high amount of access of digitization, and all the what you call certificates or the Aadhaar cards digitization. I don't think that is there properly. So when all of this is not there, physical certificates become very important so that they can prove that they have been living for there for a long period and they are not immigrants, right? That is one of the reasons why displacement is a very sad cause, which leads to the destruction of Aadhaar cards or the voter IDs or what you call the education certificates. All of these happens and they do not have any other way to prove that they are meaning that they are part of that particular state. That is another reason why the special intensive revision actually creates an exclusion, right? And the third thing is that naming. The naming culture in Manipur, right? The naming culture in Manipur is actually a little different, right? They have different names, and in each and every certificate, the name might be different. For example, let's say my name is Srihari, right? Srihari Anirudh is my name, right? And let's say in one certificate, my name is Srihari Anirudh, and in the other certificate is Srihar Anirudh. So this particular change in the name can actually lead to exclusion from the voter list. This is another aspect what can be troubling and how it can be exclude. It can exclude people from that particular state. Right. The second thing is that all the names that are there are usually tribal names. Right. And these tribal names, when written in English, are written differently, and they can be pronounced differently as well. So when they come for checking or when there is some inspection happening and the names that are written in English are different, then there can be exclusion. So that is the third aspect. The fourth aspect that is actually troubling is that cookies that are actually part of Manipur are believed to be immigrants. And that is why there is high amount of conflict. They believe that cookies are immigrants. Now, when they believe that cookies are immigrants, obviously there is high chance of bias. They might, for example, let's say a mighty person who is a mighty person is checking for all of the uh, voters and all of the documents. He comes across a cookie person, and he knows that all the mighties hate cookies. Now, when that person is hating a cookie person, obviously he look at that person and say, "It is. I think it'll be better if I exclude this person." So that way, through bias, they might get excluded, right? And the fourth aspect, or the fifth aspect is that all the cookies that have been displaced live in the relief camps. They live in relief camps. Now, what are relief camps? Obviously, when there's high amount of conflict happening, obviously they need some place to stay. They are displaced. They have to stay at some place so that they can survive. So these are the relief places, relief camps. Now, whenever the relief camps are present, they are actually a little far from the area. So the people who are actually checking for the eligibility might not go to the relief camps. So that way, even cookies are excluded. If you actually see here, cookies who are actually staying might get excluded through bias, and cookies who are displaced might get excluded due to distance. So there is high chance of cookies being displaced or cookies being excluded from the voter list. So that is why Manipur is being actually targeted. Manipur is actually being concentrated. The reason is because there is high amount of conflict. There's conflict between cookies, Nagas, and Mighties. Then there is high amount of displacement that is happening. Then all the displacement leads to lack of certificates or the documents that are necessary for showing that particular person is belonging to that area. And then there is naming issues and the bias. Then this, all of these are there. When all of these are there, obviously there is high chance of that person being excluded. Right? And the other thing that is actually troubling is the panchayats. if you actually remember, the sixth schedule only includes Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. Right? These are the only states that are under sixth schedule. Now, as they are under sixth schedule, they have more amount of protection. So whenever there's a policy or whenever there's a law, these laws are ensured that they would protect that particular states. Unlike these states, Manipur is not included in sixth schedule. Now, when it is not included in sixth schedule, the panchayats or the village chiefs that are there cannot say that or cannot clearly say that that particular person is part of that particular village. Even though there are no documents, the panchayats or the local institutions are actually weaker when it comes to SR conduction. Right? Whenever the special intensive revision is conducted, the local institutions are actually weaker because they do not have much power as they are not part of sixth schedule. These are the things that actually are worrisome when it comes to the special intensive revision when it comes to Manipur, because there is high amount of conflict, there is high amount of bias, there is high amount of what you call displacement, there is distance, there is weaker local institutions. All of these aspects ensure that it is not fair enough for people in Manipur. So what the government has to do is it has to ensure that the people who are actually displaced, and there is cookies being inspecting all of the cookie community and mighties inspecting all the mighty communities. That is how you reduce the bias. Right? You do not reduce bias by choosing any person from any community. You choose that person from particular community and help or ensure that that particular person is only verifying that particular community, not other communities. That is when the bias would not come. Okay, that is something that government can do, and these are the things that the government actually has to follow so that the exclusion aspect is not there. Right, the exclusion aspect is not there, and that the special intensive revision is conducted fairly, and all the voters are actually part of that particular voting list. Right, these are the things that we have to keep in mind when it comes to this particular editorial. Next, moving on, we have Iran and the US. Right, it's talking about Iran and US must address. Right, Iran and US must address the trust deficit for their talks to progress. I don't know why, but I don't. Obviously I knew that US wouldn't focus much on peace talks, because obviously US wants hegemony in that particular area. What is hegemony? Meaning that it wants to control that area. It wants West Asia to be under its control, because West Asia is actually a very important part. Right? It is trying to control India through its sanctions. It's trying to control Pakistan. It's trying to control all of the regions in the Asian region through its sanctions. And there are some countries in the West Asia that are not being controlled. So it tries to control through force, and that is why Iran has always been targeted. And Iran obviously got fed up and it started to attack. And in that particular attacking, even Israel joined. Israel joined as Israel believes that Iran is a threat to Israel, right? And as all of these belong and all of these consider that there is threat, they ensure that there is particular peace progress or the memorandum of understanding, so that they would ensure that this particular war is not being prolonged. So what is under the MOU? Under the MOU, they said that firstly, we'll put the ceasefire for 60 days. Right? We'll extend the ceasefire 60 days. And after extending the ceasefire for 60 days, we'll also come up or talks. We'll negotiate all the talks. Right? We'll negotiate for talks and we'll extend the ceasefire for 60 days. But there is this thing, something happened. Right? US tried to export its ships, right? Export its ships not through Strait of Hormuz, but a coast that is next to Oman. Right? That is a coast that is actually present near the Oman. As it started to use that, Iran saw that it is not trying. Iran saw that USA is not trying to resolve an issue; it is only trying to escape. So Iran got frustrated or infuriated and started to bomb what? Bomb all of these three ships. So then US thought that as Iran is attacking, we'll also attack. So Iran also attacked airstrikes on Iran, and as Iran saw that as US attacked us, we'll attack its military bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. This is how the war started again, right? Because USA didn't want to follow that particular treaty which actually signed. It said that you are going to get majority of the power when it comes to Strait of Hormuz, but as despite USA saying that, USA did not follow that. When these kind of things happen, and when these kind of things happen, it is very hard for a war to end. This is not the only cause. The main cause is that the memorandum of understanding is actually very weak. The reason why the MOU is very weak is because, firstly, Iran's funds, Iran's funds which are there are frozen, right? Despite all of these being present, Iran's funds were frozen, right? That is the first thing that Iran has actually kept in mind, right? Second thing is that Israel always believed that Iran is always a threat for Israel, because Iran openly said that Israel is against our community, and we will ensure that Israel is no more. And Iran obviously has nuclear missiles, and the amount of threat that is there is very high for Israel. So even Israel is like, will not ensure that this particular thing is left out. We'll ensure that it is resolved. So even Israel is trying to force it, right? And the second thing is Iran, right? These are the things that actually ensure that that particular MOU is very weak in nature. Right? It's very weak in nature. And the third thing is that they did not say, the third thing in that MOU is that they did not say whether that particular passage, right? USA is trying to use Oman's coast. USA is trying to use Oman's coast. But Iran said, you have safe passage from Strait of Hormuz. When you have safe passage from Strait of Hormuz, why are you using Oman's coast? What does that mean? Does that mean that you're not no longer preferring Strait of Hormuz just because I'm in control of Strait of Hormuz? That is the thing that Iran actually is thinking, and that is why it has attacked all of these three ships. Until and unless USA actually believes that we need to resolve a particular issue, it will not be resolved. Right? As long as that happens, it will not be resolved. Only war will exist. Right? And whenever these kind of wars is happening, obviously who will get affected? Obviously India will get affected, because Strait of Hormuz is a very important passage, right? And majority of our oil imports come from the Strait of Hormuz. When majority of our oil imports come from Strait of Hormuz, and when there is a conflict in that area, what happens? Obviously there will be inflation. Inflation in what? Inflation in oil. And when there is inflation in oil, obviously there is inflation in services or inflation in everything, right? We have fertilizer problems, we have what you call energy problems. All of these will be affected, and that is something that we are going to be troubled with. So obviously in these many years, I mean in these many months, we have focused on ensuring that our particular refinery capability is high. So even if that particular Strait of Hormuz is blocked, we can take oil or crude oil from many other countries like Russia, USA, and the Atlantic Basin or Congo. All these areas we can actually take the oil and we can refine it. While this is helpful in one aspect, it is very harmful in another aspect, because our import bill will increase. Import bill will increase, and it will be hard for us to ensure we are sustaining properly. So we do not have strategic reserves. We have high imports, and there is high amount of inflation in India, and obviously that will affect our growth. So GDP growth will be very low. These are the things that actually happen whenever USA or Iran or anything is happening globally. At the every time whenever there's a conflict in the global events, India is always at the end, right? It is the one that gets affected. So India has to ensure that we need to move away from all of the imports, or we should be self-reliant. Until and unless we are self-reliant, I don't think it will be uh, easy for us to survive or become a superpower just like China or USA. Until then, we will have to be a global power, which will be affected by all the conflicts that are there, right? So that is what this particular editor is talking about. Moving on. We have this concept called secondary infertility. The reason we are going to discuss this because these are the questions that UPSC might ask when it comes to GS1. Right? Secondary infertility is a concept, right? So, what is secondary infertility? Secondary infertility refers to where a particular family or a particular couple, right, have successfully had a child, meaning that they have one child, but they are not able to conceive the other child. No matter, despite trying so much, they're not able to conceive the other child. So they settle with one child. Now, the reason why it is important is because, firstly, secondary infertility we are focusing on is because it has been increasing since 2015-16, 1990s. Right? In the 1990s, the secondary fertility was around 16.5, right? 16.5%. But over the time, through the National Family Health Surveys, we have seen that by 2015-16, it rose to 28.6. It rose to 28.6%. So it clearly shows that secondary infertility is a problem for India. Now, why is it a problem for India? Obviously, it is trying to affect our demographic dividend. Now, why is secondary infertility increasing? We have to focus on why it is increasing. The reason why secondary fertility is increasing is because, firstly, career. Many families actually focus on career, or what you call building a lifestyle or a higher education. They focus a lot on these, so they have their first child by 31 or 32. They have their first child by 31 or 32, and they plan their second child by 36 or 38. Obviously, when they plan their child for 36 or 38, the bearing capacity of women starts to reduce. Obviously, the number of eggs that they produce will be of low quality, and the number of eggs that they're producing are very low in number. So, as these are there, the ability to produce a second child will be very harder. This is this first thing why there is high amount of secondary infertility. And the second thing is post-pregnancy disorders. Post-pregnancy. Post-pregnancy problems are many, right? Post-pregnancy, there might be obesity, there might be thyroid problems, there might be issues when there is delivery through cesarean or all. So these are the issues which are actually affecting secondary infertility, right? And the third thing is from the men's point of view, right? Many men might start smoking, chronic stress, obesity, bad lifestyle. These all might lead to infertility in men. And these all lead to infertility in men, which ensure that there is high amount of secondary infertility. This is how infertility is being prolonged. And obviously, the fourth aspect is social media. Social media can help in two ways. In first way, it can actually promote awareness about secondary infertility as a problem, and it can also promote solutions such as IVF. Right? These are the things that social media can actually push. And in a bad manner, social media can actually demotivate people. Many people post their second child, about their second child or third child or fourth child. So many people who are actually trying very much might get depressed. They might get lost, or they might get disappointed seeing all the things that are actually happening in the society. So that is something that is going to affect the people. Now, why are we discussing much about secondary infertility? The reason we are discussing much about secondary infertility is because we have low TFR, right? Our total replacement fertility, our fertility rate, right? Our fertility rate is around 1.9, where the replacement fertility should be at 2.1. Until and unless each and every woman's birthing capacity is 2.1, our population will not be stable, right? If it is less than 2.1, over the period, our population will start decreasing. So now our fertility rate, uh, birthing capacity is near 1.9. Now, what does that mean? It means that over the time, our population will reduce. Now, many states are trying to come with policies which would ensure that there is high amount of what you call uh, birth. Right? We are increasing or encouraging people or encouraging couples to conceive more. They are giving incentives. They are giving what you call policies or laws which are actually favorable to all the couples, which would encourage them to conceive more. Now they are trying to conceive more, but there is high amount of secondary infertility. This is a major cause that would actually hinder our ability to increase our demographic dividend. Right? Only when there are causes like money or education or what you call external factors like health or nutrition, these kind of things we can actually address. But when it comes to something that is internal like secondary infertility, that cannot be addressed clearly. So these are the things that actually we need to focus on, right? We are focusing a lot on all of the external facilities such as education, health, money, finances, all of these, but we are not actually focusing on the internal health of the people. Until unless the internal health of people is right, we'll not be able to increase our demographic dividend. That is one thing we have to keep in mind. So these are the things that UPSC might ask, right? So try to write an answer on this particular editorial so that you can gain more understanding, right? You can write an answer on this particular question by, let us see, right? Secondary infertility. Secondary infertility is not a recent phenomenon. However, it affects India's capability to increase its demographic dividend. You can write it as a 10-marker answer, because usually these kind of questions, these kind of concepts usually come, but they are usually asked for 10-marker. So whenever these kind of questions are asked, see, it's talking about how secondary infertility is not a recent phenomenon. So in the introduction, you would show how that the NFHS surveys showed that the secondary infertility had risen from 16.5 in the 1990s to 28.6 in the 2015-16, not making it a recent phenomenon. Okay, and then you would write about how it is affecting India's capability. Then you would write as non-core dimension on what secondary infertility is. You'd be writing how a couple not being able to conceive a second child after the first child is nothing but secondary infertility. Then you would write some causes, right? And then you would go to this particular main demand, which is saying that it affects India's capability in increasing its demographic dividend. Then how you would write how? You would write about total replacement fertility. Then you'd be writing about the causes of total replacement fertility and what India can do to ensure that the total replacement fertility is proper and secondary infertility is not affecting our demographic dividend. This is what you would write in that particular answer, and you would conclude about how that the secondary demographic dividend is not only about external factors such as money, finances, education, health, what do you call it, hospitals, but it's also about the internal health of the people. Until and unless the internal health is proper, it is very hard for India to maintain a demographic dividend. These are the things that you would write, and let me know how you would write this answer, right? So that is all for today's class. Hope you guys have learned a lot. Thank you. See you guys in the next class.